Welcome to Storytelling. This week's guest brings a fascinating perspective on AI and its impact on learning and development. He is the CEO of 5app, a UK learning technology company, and has spent much of his career working in workplace learning with a particular interest in what makes learning stick and leads to real changes in behaviour. More recently, his focus has turned to how AI can help organisations understand the impact of learning and support people to develop through their everyday work. In this episode, we explore AI learning and the future of workplace development. Please welcome Philip Huthwaite. Hello, Philip, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Debbie.
Philip, for years, we've accepted that learning at work means taking people away from their jobs for a day or two. Is that model still fit for purpose in the age of AI?
I'm going to challenge the preconception that only about 50% of businesses invest in learning and development. So actually sort of challenging that question, which is sort of makes me weep as an L&D professional to start with. But the 50% that do invest in professional development, absolutely, the traditional model is go and attend an away day or go and attend a week's course if you're lucky enough to partake in that. Certainly, typically the larger organizations, especially when it comes to onboarding or at big milestones in your career, you're generally sent away from your desk and sent to big training to get you to the next level. But I think in an AI world, especially the more senior you get in an organization, certainly sort of a lot of my peers you talk to, if I said to them, are you investing in L&D yourself? Are you going to go away? And they would say, no, I barely take holiday, right? So the chance of going away from my desk, and AI therefore opens up the ability to do more, sort of cue an L&D buzzword. And so forgive me, sort of in the flow of work, and AI enables you to do more in less time and weave it into your current working day.
So what has changed over the last few years that has made organisations rethink learning and development? And you mentioned only 50% invest in learning and development. Do you think more will invest as a result of AI? Are there more opportunities there?
I mean, that has been around for quite a while. So it's whether or not more will invest, I think the jury's out there. I think the ones that are investing will probably expand and adopt other practices to try and get more out of their current expenditure. I mean, we're already seeing that as it is. I mean, to give you an example of some of the things that we're doing from an AI perspective is we're using AI to analyze and provide insights in terms of how people perform in meetings, so in the flow of work. So historically, if you were to give a leader an assessment on how they're performing, what you would have had to have done is you would have had to have sent them to a training course, and maybe during that training course, they would have done a role play, and the role play would have been assessed by the course leader, course trainer, course coach. Alternatively, you might have had peer review surveys throughout your working year, but more often than not, when you're getting feedback in terms of how you're performing as a leader, you would get your annual review. Often that is a pressure cooker environment because you're hoping for a pay rise maybe, and it's just not scalable. So if we look at how AI can help a lot of the organizations today, it gives the ability for you to get a lot more visibility in terms of how you're performing. So we ourselves have a tool called Helix, which can join virtual meetings and provide you with insights and feedback and over 100 soft skills, and really provide you with feedback to how you're performing in your job. So it's using your performance in the job. It's not a sterile environment. It's not, a forced, goodness me, I've got a coach who's going to analyze how I'm going to perform. It's not that pressure cooker environment. And it's giving you those, to come back to the previous question, it's giving you those micro nudges, almost like the incremental gains. And you don't have to go to a training course. You don't have to take time away from your desk. You're having that meeting already, and it just AI enables you to augment what you're already doing. You might not necessarily look at every single analysis it gives you, but it's there as a reference point if you need it to augment and support and nudge and nurture. And that, I guess, is getting a lot of positive in the workplace. There's sort of a lot of negativity around it. But I would say, from my perspective, it's augmenting what we're doing and almost turbocharging our ability, so we can do a lot more with a lot less. And to come back to your question, that means that you can attend training, have a learning and development without having to take time away from your desk.
You use the words nudge and nurture. And I think that's a concept that not many people think about, because this is a system that can nudge you to perform better, or to think about, maybe I can excel further with additional training in a particular area, for example.
Yeah. So for me, I think there's a common misconception. I think certainly, I mean, L&D in the workplace is a classic, right? You get sent off to a week's course on how to be better at presenting, for example, all the way through to, how to send a better email. Like, you wouldn't believe it. There's all sorts of different training courses you can go on it. And it seemed very much as like a tick box exercise. Oh, I've attended that 1 day course. I've attended that week's course. I'm cured, or I'm now an expert at whatever the topic might be. But human beings grow and excel on repetition, right? If I was to say to you, go away and learn I think we were speaking before, if I say to you, go away and learn a language, right? Okay. It requires that repetition. It's not something which you can go and pick up a book, and none of us are blessed with that bigger capability. And so really, AI and in any L&D function, right? Human beings need that sort of guidance, that repetition, and AI gives you the ability to do more of that, to guide, support, to nudge, to give you more insights into, certainly from our perspective, for where you've got an opportunity to grow. And it's those micro movements and sort of on a regular basis where it becomes more ingrained. And that's what certainly we try to do. Human beings will always, this is a mass generalization, right? But human beings typically try and take the path of least resistance. And, if you can operate and support them where they currently are. I mean, let's look at just simple things like, if you're going to go away and get fit in January, okay, they say to you, the gym says to you, if you can just make it simple and commit two times a week or even once a week, you're still going to be there come January, right? But you're only going to get the results if you're going 2 times a week. And that's what I mean by those nudges and those micro movements. Certainly from my background in a corporate learning and development function, the organizations are going to get the best outcome from their employees if they support them on a continual basis from an L&D perspective, rather than just, I'm going to send you to a course once every 2 years and kind of hope that you digest what you learn and you use it in the workplace.
Can you share an example, without naming a client's name, where an organization changed its approach to learning and saw a measurable impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got lots of organizations that are forward thinking and are starting to use AI more openly inside their organizations. So, for example, the most recent case study that's come out, we're using our AI skills intelligence capability called Helix. They've improved their communication skills by 30%. They've improved their assertiveness by 26%. And this is by giving insights at the beginning of the engagement. Okay, just they're doing what they're doing. They haven't gone off and haven't had to go away and attend this complicated training course. And then they've adopted Helix inside their organization, and they've used the insights, and therefore the nudges between the meetings, between the, right, if I was to use me as an example, right, Philip, in meetings, if you can improve your strategic vision, and you might start like to frame it this way, or you might like to improve your accountability and frame it this way. You framed it like that, and it was felt that the other team might not have received it as well. And it's those micro improvements. It holds the mirror up against you, and you can say, yeah, I recognize that. But I think, the important thing to remember is that the human is still there to say, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. It's that human judge, if you will, and that's never going to go. And those, certainly from a corporate perspective, practicing those skills of judgment and assessment, those are the ones that are going to excel and stand out and grow. And so hopefully that gives you sort of a feel. It's that improving soft skill development from the start of the engagement all the way through to seeing if it excels and grows.
And I want to touch on that human judgment, because as AI becomes better at delivering knowledge, which human skills become even more valuable?
I mean, it's going to be the soft skills that are going to be more and more valuable. So, I think certainly a number of the technical skills that we're seeing are essentially the routine technical skills are going to become less needed or less prevalent, and it is those soft skills that are going to rise to the fore, which is the ultimate irony when is AI and technology is coming out. But the human skills, the judgment, the assessment, the communication, the reasoning, because AI doesn't know what it needs to do. You've still got to instruct AI, you've still got to digest what it's telling you, and then decide whether or not to implement it or not. And it's that loop, that assessment loop, that the reasoning that humans excel at, especially when you're dealing with in creative art, or even when you're, from my perspective, when you're writing your board pack, right? It'd be easy to say, go away and write the board pack and AI can analyze all the numbers and create it. But more often than not, it gets the story wrong or it doesn't quite change it. So you have to iterate and change and make sure that it's communicating in a way that you feel is going to land. So those are the skills that are going to become more and more prevalent.
So, Philip, if we fast forward 5 years from now, what do you think learning at work will look like?
I still very much think, human to human contact is going to stay. So still, it's important, just as humans are social creatures, right? So it's important to still try and take time away from your desk. I mean, even outside of L&D, I'm regularly telling the team, go out for a walk at lunchtime and things like that. So certainly from an L&D perspective, that's going to change. I don't think that in our world, the learning management system is dead has been something which has been flying around for almost like the last decade, right? So it's a one-stop shop where your learning ecosystem exists and everyone logs onto it and accesses their learning content and downloads it, at regular intervals. I do think that is going to come in the next sort of 5 or so years. And I think, but rather not just learning systems as we know is going to change. So it's almost like before I knew I was logging into the learning system. I knew I had to do that compliance training, whereas actually it's going to be a lot more blended into our day to day. So, you'll be doing your emails and a learning system will be plugged into your emails and plugged into your calls and things like that. And you almost like subliminally are learning and getting nudges and support where you need. And you don't know that you're in a learning function or a learning system. And I think that's the change that we're going to see. It's a lot more, L&D will be done a lot more in our day-to-day work rather than I'm going to block out time once every 2 years to attend this training course.
Yes, and I think as a result, you'll have a much stronger workforce as well, certainly one in the way that a company would like. If every leader listening could change just one thing about how they develop their people tomorrow morning, what would it be?
I mean, obviously, aside from signing up for our technology, which would be transformational, I think, I'm a technologist, so this is sort of the angle that I come from. I am still flabbergasted when I talk to potential new prospects, and I just say, have you opened up OpenAI? Have you had a play with Claude? Have you tried to do some analysis on you, or tried to help it support you to do some work? And obviously, I get that different organizations have different AI policies, but I'm still staggered that I talk to people and they haven't done that.
Mhm.
And so I think certainly I would implore leaders to almost like take the shackles off and show the path of a potential opportunity, because AI is certainly, from a learning and development perspective, is accelerating at such a great pace, and it's hugely, hugely valuable. But it's almost like you've got to use. I sort of see the playing with OpenAI as almost like the gate. Forgive me, it's like the gateway drug. It's sort of, I think there's like a hesitation
Mm.
of, goodness me, I don't know, and I'm going to bury my head under the rug. And I think want organizations to almost step off the pavement and start to see that it can really benefit and really help. And then you'd be surprised of how effective it can be over time.
Why do you think there is still hesitation?
I think people still think it's highly technical.
Mhm.
So, I mean, obviously, this is not based on a study. It's based on, talking to my peers and who run organizations, and some are they're involved in more and not. I think there's this fear that, like if I was to say to you, go away and do some software engineering, I mean, I'm not a software engineer. I think you'd be like, goodness me, I don't even, what's a terminal? Hang on, I've just, it's like really complicated. And I think that is one of the barriers that people are worried that it is a huge technical hurdle. Whereas actually they find that if you ask the AI to help you to use their own product, like it does help that. But also, there are still big concerns about security and transparency and where my data is going to go, and that is a hurdle that we need to overcome as a civilization as a whole, right? Let alone if you're one organization and want to protect your data, and there's sort of a fear that it's going to go off and train a model, or if you're one institution, that you're going to put something into it and then suddenly another institution is going to ask a question and they're going to somehow, which doesn't happen. But I think that's the fear, that that data is going to go off where they don't have control over. But I mean, if you put the right processes in place, that's not going to happen.
What reassurance would you give to someone listening who still isn't convinced? Because there are those, as you've mentioned, who think that there's going to be data breaches. Everyone's going to know company secrets. We've had I think this week or last week, that there was a new legislation on data. What reassurance would you give to anyone listening right now?
Well, some of the stories that I've read, it actually transpires that it's been sort of a storm in a teacup and hasn't been quite as drastic as it otherwise said. I mean, first, don't, if your first step is trying it, don't share sensitive information with I mean, the simplest thing if you're getting into AI that you can do is use it to help you construct some emails that don't have anything sensitive in it, and then you start to go, well, hang on a minute, actually it's pretty good at that, pretty clever at that. And then over time you'll build the confidence. That would be how I would sort of say and share. But also, I mean, there's really simple settings, like, in every single AI model that you have that's paid, right? Because the free ones, don't share anything with a free model that you don't want to be used, because it's a quid pro quo, right? There are settings in there which say just simply don't send my data anywhere. Don't use this data to train any large language models. And as long as you tick that, you're good to go.
Philip, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and for sharing the invaluable work you're doing with learning and development. And thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Debbie.
If you would like further details about Philip and 5app, then please follow the links in the show notes.